I think the encouraging thing is there's positive buzz from the running back room. I've heard some good things. Now, a lot of this, when I say buzz, a lot of this is just rumors. Again, we're not, it's not like these official reports coming out of here. Oh, so-and-so did this in practice and so-and-so did that. But encouraging stuff around Caleb Johnson, which doesn't surprise me. We talked about him way back when he signed, Mark. He is a big, big running back. Maybe some shades of poor man's Braylon Allen at Wisconsin. Now, Allen was a converted safety, kind of a freak, but I think a guy like Caleb Johnson has a chance to play early because of those physical traits. He's listed, I think, at 215, 220, somewhere in there, around 6'1". Kirk had previously suggested that he's actually closer to 6'2". So that's a positive. Iowa needs downhill runners, and I think they've got a number of them. I'm not saying that that's going to be a strong position group, but you can definitely see some potential there. Sounds like there's been flashes so far. Basically Iowa fans, all Iowa fans have are reports from bloggers and media people on Twitter and rumors on message boards. I've got a couple of connections to people who I would consider to be good resources, but I mean, it's so limited, Mark. Again, we'll get a lot more later in the week. I can tell you that I've heard good things from several people on Caleb Johnson. It seems like the university is, and I'm not trying to say that the guy who, or the people who are doing the daily photo gallery from fall camp, I'm not saying that those guys are trying to ignite the fan base, but there have been a lot of pictures of Deontay Vines. I can tell you that at wide receiver, which is sort of interesting. They need help at receiver with Charlie Jones and Tyrone Tracy leaving. We know that Jackson Ritter, who played some last year, is out for the season with an injury. So it just seems like the university's not really holding back in the Deontay Vines. It seems like every day he's showing up making a play in these photos. And again, they're just photos. I get it. You do see him running with, I would say, at least the twos, which I would hope that he'd be running with at least twos. That's a very thin room right now. No sign of Keegan Johnson, and that's sort of part of the worrisome part of this. I mean, we've had like 6 photo galleries, 6 days of fall camp, 7, somewhere in there, I think 6. This is day 6, and no sign of Keegan Johnson. We know he dealt with the injury that kept him out of the game against Kentucky back in January, as well as much of, I think, all of spring practice. That's a worrisome thing. Last I knew, it was an abdominal problem, and so, I mean, if he's not back by now, you do have to wonder what is his status moving forward. It doesn't sound like there's been anything official. I know some of the media spoke with Kirk. I don't know if it was I was told that there was a conversation with Kirk earlier this week by someone, I won't name who I'm talking about, but it doesn't sound like there have been any updates on injuries about anyone. So nothing on Keegan Johnson. Another guy who's not showing up in these pictures so far, Mark, is Davidkov. And he was a 4-star offensive lineman who enrolled early last year. He's on the 2 deep. He ran with the ones a lot during the spring. So that's a bit odd. There have been rumors on message boards that he's going to be transferring. I don't know. I mean, I don't know why he would transfer, but you never know what's going on in a kid's life. I believe he's from Illinois, so he's not real far from home. These are just we're just speculating on these things at this point, but no sign of from, at least from what I've seen, and I've tried to peruse these photos and stay up to date. No sign of Keegan Johnson, no sign of Davidkov, and no sign of John Wagner, who's listed as a starter at defensive end. So, I mean, take that as you may. You hope it means nothing, and if guys are dinged up, you hope they can get back. We're less than a week into fall camp, so hopefully we get more information. I would assume we'll know a lot more Friday.
Folks, what is most tangible after a few days of practice, even after a few weeks of practice, whether that be in the spring, but most notably in the fall, because of what's at stake, playing football games very soon, is taking what the coaches and the coordinators and the athletes have to say, and then adding that up to what the information is going into camp, meaning nobody is gathering much from watching these teams play. Even your beat writers, which I have on here on a regular basis for various teams, they get a small look at the team. And most of that is stretching and a few drills, possibly at isolated times during fall camp, maybe 3 or 4 times. And the rest of it, they're basically taking what they know of the team heading into fall camp and then putting that together with the comments made by coaches and players. And then somebody or a few chosen people may have some inside information because they know a few trainers, they know a few people on the inside that they may get threads of information that are meaningful. And the rest of it is basically putting 2 and 2 together as best we can.
And I can tell you this, I can tell you that one thing that was given to me or noted to me from a very reliable source, and I've heard this now a couple different times, but this is a source I do trust on this, is that Caden Wetjen, who looked really good in the spring at wide receiver, specifically with his speed, it sounds like he's working extensively in the return game. Which isn't a huge surprise. He's a JUCO transfer in, and they need help at returner, at punt return and at kick return with Charlie Jones leaving. So that was the guy I was keeping my eye on after spring. So I'm not surprised to see him working, or hear that he's working quite a bit returning kicks and punts. I do think this, Mark. I will say this: being an Iowa fan and having, because I am a fan first, having followed Iowa football and been through this process for years. I can tell you there always seems to be at least a couple of really big surprises during fall camp. Like it might just be personnel. It might be an injury. You hope it's not, or a couple of injuries. Right now, the last thing Iowa needs is a major injury to a wide receiver, and especially your top 3. So if I'm Iowa, if I'm an Iowa fan, Davidkov, we'll see what happens there. We'll see what happens with the punt return and kick return. Keegan Johnson has to be healthy. Like that's the biggest concern if I'm an Iowa fan right now, because he goes down. You got Arlen Bruce, Nico Regani, and then nothing as far as proven experience. Again, the only other guy that's on the roster that has proven experience is Jackson Ritter, and he's out for the season. And remember, you lose all those people, all those apologists who defended Iowa. For some reason, they feel the need to defend Iowa when guys like Charlie Jones up and leave. He wasn't going to play anyways. Well, we're going to see the results. There are people who are saying that
Jones?
Still. Yeah, well, on offense, they think. Don't listen to it, Mark. It's just ridiculous. I hear this all the time. Still, Iowa fans who, anytime a guy leaves, and you probably get this out of other fan bases, he wasn't going to. It's addition by subtraction. He wasn't going to play anyways. He must have slipped down the depth chart. That's a load of malarkey as it relates to Charlie Jones. The kid was going to play, and all I can say now is, we've talked about it, but health between Charlie Jones, Arlen Bruce, and Nico Regani is of utmost importance. And if you lose Keegan Johnson for any stretch of time, I mean, who's your number one guy at that point? Who's lining up at? I mean, I don't know. First of all, you've got Nico Regani, who had I thought a really down year last year. You'd expect him to step up as a senior, but he's limited athletically. He's not going to be a blow the top off the defense type of receiver. You hope Arlen Bruce can be that. I've compared him to a poor man's Rondale Moore, but he's got a lot to prove in order to fulfill that potential. And then you have to hope somebody who's on this roster. Is it Deontay Vines, who we keep seeing pop up in these photos? Is it a Brody Brecht, who, by the way, is another guy that I have not seen one photo of entire spring practice? So I see people on Twitter on a daily asking about Brecht. I have no idea. And if Brecht, he's been, he of course was bothered by a hamstring during baseball. If he's not 100% by now, then there's another issue. So right now, as far as healthy scholarship wide receivers that I can confirm that I know are competing in spring practice, you've got Vines, you've got Bruce, and you've got Regani. And then I'm assuming Bostic's in there, and maybe I've missed Jacob Bostic, who's a freshman. I've heard good things about his flashes early. But who else is who else is going to step up? Is it Alec Wick, who's a walk-on from Regina? Is it, mentioned Wetjen earlier? That is a thin position, Mark. And I've been concerned about wide receiver even before Charlie Jones left and before Jackson Ritter got hurt and before we started to see a lack of Keegan Johnson in these photos. So that's a continued concern.
Sounds like Kirk Ferentz has a built-in excuse not to go to 4 wides and throw the ball downfield.
Well, I will say this. Iowa does typically play 4 to 5 receivers a game in some capacity. So you're going to need the bodies regardless of